Hello, everybody. Tom Sykes, the Royalist here. Hope you can all hear me okay. Okay, great. You can hear me? Fantastic. Okay, so Andrew is standing by. I can see him backstage in his office. Just if you'll bear with me, I'm going to now just add Andrew and then we'll get things going. Big round of applause for Andrew Lownie.
Hello, very nice to see you, Tom. You always look so smart. I feel I need to put a tie on for you.
Well, do you know, Andrew, when I first started doing this, I thought I've got all these lovely suits in the cupboard and I never get an opportunity to wear them anymore. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to use them for
your presentations. Well, you look so much. I mean, I'm sure you have lots of respect as a result of that. People take you much more seriously than people with open neck shirts.
Exactly. Now, part of the reason that I wanted to use YouTube and to use this format to talk to you today, rather than doing it on Substack, was because someone's saying I hear nothing. Well, hopefully they can hear. I think everyone else can hear. Hopefully everyone can hear. You might just need to turn your volume up, HMRC1. So part of the reason I wanted to do it this way today was because great, we can hear. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So Andrew, sorry, as I was saying, part of the reason that I wanted to do it this way today is because I wanted to show a few clips.
But much of the reporting has indications of this story just keep going on and on and on.
I'm just not mystified, but I'm amazed by the reach that this guy had. I mean, he worked on it, didn't he? He worked on that reach.
Look, we still don't know the absolute truth, even behind that photo taken in Central Park. Mm-hmm. But much of the reporting has suggested that it was very useful to Epstein because it provided sort of compromise. You know, it links him. I mean, the number of people that have ended up lying for Epstein, whose careers have ended up in absolute tatters because of their connections to him. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg. I genuinely do. I think we're at the tip of the iceberg. The ramifications.
So I just thought that was a really interesting point. So that was Emily Maitlis speaking yesterday after these new revelations came out, Andrew. Do you feel the same thing? Do you feel we're at the tip of the iceberg? Do you think there's a lot more to come out?
Absolutely. I mean, I put in my book that I felt I only had the tip of the iceberg after 4 years research, and there was a lot more that might come out. I mean, might never come out. All I had access to were, leaked emails, court cases, previous cuts, and interviews. I think it's becoming clearer, and I got this instinct when I was researching it, that it's a huge, huge network, and we've only had a few names, and those names will come. I do feel the dam has been breached. And having thought that the whole thing would be suppressed, that we will begin to see some justice for the victims, I think, and some of these rich and powerful men actually have to face the consequences of their actions. I'm interested by her comment about compromat. I mean, certainly I interviewed Annette Witheridge, who was one of the journalists who covered the story, basically took the pictures at Central Park. And, she was very clear that the paparazzi were outside. Epstein knew that, and he deliberately went out for this walk, basically to show off his mate and to basically give him a little bit of protection. And I think the extraordinary thing is the protection officer allowed Andrew to go and make this trip into Central Park. There was no reason for it except to proudly proclaim, look, I'm controlling Andrew. And we're now knowing more and more about this trip in December 2010. One, that it wasn't the end of their relationship, which I knew about. That it wasn't actually to say goodbye, but it was about getting more money for Sarah Ferguson. I think also I'd heard for reassurances that Andrew wasn't going to be blackmailed in effect because of the compromise there was. I understand that he was also talking about another deal with something Atria Petroleum. So there was a lot going on this trip, and that's why it was 5 days. That's why he stayed there.
That's a really good point, Andrew. So I'm very proud of my technological genius. So let's just see. I've hopefully got a clip now coming up of Andrew lying to Emily Maitlis, as we now know, saying that this was the end of their relationship,
with the benefit of all the high
and giving his curious reasoning as to well, let's let Andrew speak for himself, because this is one of those great clips of all time.
Offender.
It was a convenient place to stay. I mean, I've gone through this in my mind so many times. At the end of the day, with the benefit of all the hindsight that one could have, it was definitely the wrong thing to do. But at the time, I felt it was the honourable and right thing to do. And I admit fully that my judgment was probably coloured by my tendency to be too honourable, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way that he's always too honourable, and his wife thinks he's too honourable. I mean, his wife was continuing to stay at Epstein's properties until at least 2014. I know that from the doorman who then left. So, I mean, possibly later. And I mean, I suspect he was also staying at these properties after 2011. I think what we've got to remember is this leaked email, which gives us a little bit more detail, is not, we've seen part of this email before. It's part of the Joss Slaley case, and the quote about let's play a bit more. But it looks even more sinister now, not just because, of course, it's the day after the picture of him and Virginia Giuffre appears in the Mail on Sunday, but because it shows the two of them are bonded together. They see that Andrew sees them in this together, and it is kind of shocking when you think that Andrew and his merry men have been trying to discredit Virginia Giuffre for years, saying the picture was fake. They knew nothing about nothing about her, and they are sort of kind of plotting how they're going to deal with her. Kelly has no shame. This idea. I mean, I don't think any of us would talk about playing. I mean, that's not the relationship one has with other men, or frankly even other women at that sort of age. So it's an extraordinary thing for him to have put in an email. And I think the big question, and maybe you can answer this, is where are these leaked emails coming from? I mean, they're being bought by the Mail on Sunday and the Sun. They're being clearly Daphne Barrack has some involvement in them, but she's ghosting the pieces with Mark Hookham. Who is giving them this stuff? And this drip feed is always
the conspiracy theory. So the conspiracy theory is that Ghislaine is feeding them out, and it's to put pressure on the administration to give her a pardon, basically. I mean, that's I don't know if it's true or not, but
why would she
have
access?
It's Daphne Barrack.
But why would she have access? Because I mean, this is stuff from the Slaley trial.
But presumably, I suppose the theory is that Ghislaine was trusted by Epstein and would have had access to the Epstein end of the emails.
Right, and she's kept them.
That's the theory,
insurance.
and that she's kept them as insurance and is feeding them out to Daphne Barrack. And Daphne Barrack, of course, was, going into bat for Prince Andrew as recently as last year, saying that he was going to overturn the whole thing and blah blah blah. But she's obviously decided.
She's changed her allegiance. Well, we know that Ghislaine doesn't like Fergie, so I mean, you can see that once to put the boot in there. I mean, my own theory, I think, which we've discussed, is that actually there's no need to give Ghislaine a pardon. That she's now been moved not just to this Texas correctional facility, but somewhere else, probably no longer in the correctional system. And in some ways, she's been given the get out of jail free card, and everyone's hoping that she will just quietly disappear. But maybe not. Maybe she is there, and she's now having to fight her corner. I mean, there are lots of theories, and that one of the reasons that Epstein and Trump fell out was that Epstein had expected a pardon from Trump, and Trump wasn't going to give it. and Epstein was prepared to spill the beans on Trump. And shortly after that, Epstein dies, very conveniently to a lot of people. And I think but more and more people are coming around to the feeling that this was not a suicide.
Absolutely. Just want to take you back one step there. So this email this weekend, as you say, the horrible sort of gross let's play email that Andrew sent to Epstein was sent the day after the photograph of Virginia Giuffre was published in the Daily Mail. Now, it's been a pivotal part of Andrew's case that this photograph was faked. His surrogates, if you want, Victoria Harvey, has been very prominent on this, saying it was faked, that she knows all the people who faked it. And Andrew himself, in the interview, didn't use the word "it's faked," but he did say it's photograph. You can't prove it's real. I have no recollection of it. And here is the point, another point, where a very memorable moment in the interview where Andrew explains why Virginia Giuffre must have been lying. So
specific about that night. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have possibly.
There's a slight problem with the sweating because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time, and that was yes, I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. And I simply, it was almost impossible for me to sweat, and it's only because I have done a number of things in the recent past that I'm starting to be able to do that again. So
I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it? It's
well, we have pictures in the book of him sweating at exactly that time, running out of China Whites. So I think what I find so extraordinary about these Bonnie and Clyde is that they just make up the most stupid lies, which can easily be shown up. I think the picture is absolutely genuine. I actually had lunch today with Sandra White. Now, Sandra White was the person sent by the Mail on Sunday to keep an eye on Virginia Giuffre. She got to know her very well over several weeks. In fact, was asked to ghost her memoirs, she was there when the picture was taken out of the pack and the shelf. Michael Thomas, who's a very reputable photographer, again stands up to that. Lots of people saw that picture at the time, including Sandra, Tony Figueroa, who was Virginia's boyfriend at the time, Sky Roberts, the father, Caroline Andriamo. So, I mean, this stuff from Victoria Harvey, I mean, it's all part of a campaign which began, and I put some of the stuff in the book, from basically PR firms trying to undermine Virginia Giuffre's testimony, because without Virginia Giuffre's testimony, actually, none of this stuff would have come out. We owe her a great debt. But it's ridiculous. I mean, the forensic experts, who've gone through this picture, even the copy, and said it's quite clear picture of the time. Nothing has been changed. So these people are in cloud cuckoo land. And they're becoming, frankly, not just a joke, but actually very nasty pieces of work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as you say, of course, Virginia Giuffre, as you say, we owe her a lot in revealing this and exposing this. She was absolutely traduced in life by Andrew's allies and friends and legal team. She said she was a prostitute, said she was a sex worker, said she was deeply complicit in recruiting other girls and all that, was conveniently ignoring the fact that, she'd been systematically raped since the age of, a very young age. I mean, it's just, the whole thing was just absolutely disgusting.
Deeply traumatized. I mean, what Sandra said to me was, she was deeply traumatized. Clearly, she was part of the sort of Ponzi scheme, but I mean, given her upbringing, it isn't surprising. I mean, plenty of women were drawn into this, Sarah Kellen and others. It doesn't, as you say, excuse how she was treated herself. but it explains, her behaviour subsequently. But I think, one of the shocking things for me was to discover that, she was kind of ordered like a cat out of a catalogue, in effect. I mean, Andrew chose her. It's not as if, she suddenly turned up, and you might like Virginia. And this book was circulating, and Laura Burns, in her researches for the Panorama program, I think brought out some of this stuff. I think what's interesting is all those stories have been heavily discredited by very reputable sources, and yet somehow the media still gives some sort of prominence to these people who are talking complete rubbish.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there was a ridiculous interview with Victoria Harvey in the Sunday Times the other day. It was just, as you say, it's just crazy that they're even being given credence. And after everything we now know about Andrew, we know that he was lying about so much in the Newsnight interview, so much thanks to the stuff that you uncovered. I suppose now what I also wanted to talk to you, and which is something that I've been very interested in, is what's going to happen to Andrew now, because the king seems to have sort of missed the opportunity. He was presented with a situation where the deal had pretty well been done by the Queen, and for some reason Charles decided to start bringing Andrew and Sarah Ferguson back into the fold, inviting them to Christmas and all these kinds of things, and now is faced with the trouble of trying to expel them all over again, when frankly, he's got other things on his mind, such as trying to deal with a very serious health diagnosis. I was writing today, I've been writing for a couple of months about how you can sort of see that Charles isn't entirely serious about kicking him out of the family, because he's allowed him to keep these shooting weekends at Windsor and at Sandringham. And I sort of noticed, I've been writing this for a couple of months and no one's picked up on it. And then suddenly this weekend, it seemed like the mainstream media did pick up on it, with the Mail doing something on it, the Telegraph doing something on it.
Well, we listened to you, Tom. You were influential. It may take time. You may be a prophet in your own country for a while. But I think most people, journalists, don't have the sort of connections you have in that world and don't understand that world. I can see, I originally kind of thought, well, let him have his shooting weekends if it keeps him quiet and out of mischief. But I do think there needs to be some penalty. But I think public opinion wants something. But and you're absolutely right. The king hasn't done enough. He needs to get ahead of this story, and because public opinion is sort of shifting quite quickly to being quite negative about the whole monarchy. I mean, this is a very worrying stage, I think. When you've got Ian Wilson saying we're close to Republic, and Republic getting quite excited, and that's all because they're not grasping the situation. I think we could have another Newsnight interview where actually they tell the truth, both Sarah and Andrew, and let's get all this stuff out, stop the drip stuff, or maybe she can appear on Loose Woman and get a softer interview. But there's clearly a lot more still to come out, which must worry them. And I think it's ridiculous. There he is signing himself Knight of the Garter at KG. I mean, that's pretty pompous to start with. But also, what is he doing? This is an order of chivalry, and this is a man who has continued to basically be best mates with a paedophile, a convicted paedophile. I mean, it's extraordinary. And the lies, I'm afraid, are not just coming from Andrew; they're coming from the palace as well. We saw that. I kind of delineate that in the book, and they've covered for him for years, and that's why he felt he was protected. And they kind of need to stop covering for him.
And this is a question that I'm always asked over and over again. And in fact, people are saying it in the comments here today. How much did the Queen know? How complicit was she? What level of responsibility does she bear? I mean, for example, V. Scarlett, why did the Queen allow him to continue his damaging behaviour for so many years? And what is the short answer to that?
Mother. She was a mother, and a bit like Mrs. Thatcher had a blind spot with Mark Thatcher. This was a case where the monarchy didn't come ahead of her son, and it's a tragedy. But I mean, people I know went and complained to her about everything from Epstein to his time as special trade envoy, and they got a flea in their ear. And the private secretary's got to the point of saying there's no point coming to us. I know that she and Prince Philip argued about this. He had a much strong, he felt, for example, the sale of Sunninghill was wrong. And there were cover-ups all the way through. And I think
one of the Sunninghill, just to explain to people who may not be as steeped as this in you, that it was sold to a Kazakhstani
son-in-law of the president of Kazakhstan, with whom Andrew was doing business.
For 4 million over the asking price?
Well, 3 million more than the asking price, but it was valued at 6 million. It was put on the market at 12 and sold for 15, having sat in the market with no buyers for 5 years and basically going to rack and ruin. It was going to be taken over as a hostel for the homeless. That doesn't seem like a straight business transaction.
Torn down, wasn't it?
Yep.
It was torn down, wasn't it? What happened after? Did they rebuild something on it?
It was rebuilt.
Who knows? It was
into another hideous building, the hideous house. Yeah, and I mean, any accusations that this was money laundering, received legal letters. But we've got people on the record saying this was a little thank you to Andrew for what he'd done. I mean, it's pretty clear. But I think what's so worrying is that the institution is not just that they haven't sort of dealt with Andrew; they've allowed him, as your readers are saying, including the Queen, to support him in his action. I mean, he was kind of made honorary vice admiral or given some new honor, or she would allow him to walk her down the aisle, all the time giving the impression that he was an innocent man and she stood by him and she was putting her reputation on the line. And all the time she was protecting a guy who clearly was we were banged to rights and frankly should have been investigated by the National Crime Agency and the Metropolitan Police.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of incredible, isn't it, that he's never faced any kind of proper police action, as far as we can tell. I mean, or indeed Sarah Ferguson, who was caught on camera offering access to him for £250,000, which seems a clear violation of the standards in public life laws.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think I think people are looking to see if there is a private prosecution that could be brought under that. But we also have the case of Selman Turk, the 2022 High Court case, where suddenly it emerges the Yorks have taken £1.3 million, which they can't explain, which is part of the misappropriation of this Turkish millionaire's funds. But they can't explain. Say it's a birthday present, a wedding present, a help to get a passport. Clearly, none of those things. But they haven't. They just say nothing in the hope the problem will go away. And I think people just want some answers now. But you're absolutely right. I mean, even if they're not investigated, they should have at least have made themselves available to the victims' lawyers, to the law enforcement agencies as material witnesses. They were staying in these houses. They must have seen things. And yet we've never got to that stage. And it just shows just how, I would say, how corrupt our establishment is, that this hasn't happened.
Yeah. I've been showing a few slides while we've been chatting, and this picture of the King and his brother taken less than a month ago. No, sorry, just over a month ago, September the 6th, I think, and we're now October the 14th. I mean, they look like they're getting along pretty grand, don't they? You wouldn't guess there's anything amiss, and I could understand looking at this why Prince Andrew would think that he was going to be able to hang on to his shooting weekends, to hang on to his meals being delivered up from the kitchens at Windsor Castle. What is the truth of the relationship between Charles and Andrew? Because I was under the impression that they had a very fraught relationship when they were younger, because Andrew sort of fancied himself as the heir rather than the spare. And then as they got older, Charles, mistrusted Andrew and thought he was bad news. And we had the famous slimming down of the monarchy, where he wasn't allowed to join on the balcony at the Golden Jubilee. And yet suddenly when he ascends the throne, and it was said to be Charles who was very much behind him being asked to resign all his royal commissions and patronages. And yet when Charles ascends the throne, I don't know, he seems to go to great extent to bring Charles and Sarah Ferguson back into the fold. It's just, so that's really my question for you, Andrew.
Yeah,
what
well,
is the relationship between them? Do they get on, or do they not get on?
No, I don't think they get on. I think they're very different characters. And as you say, there was a certain amount of jostling and envy between them. I mean, I think Charles felt that Andrew had a pretty easy ride. He was able to pursue his own career. He had good looks. And Charles's life was prescribed. I think after the Queen died, I think she must have said to Charles, "Look, he is the most difficult, vulnerable of the children. Can you keep a sort of eye on him? Make sure he's okay." And I think that's partly conditions his behaviour. I think partly he's worried about any scandals that might emerge that could be leaked from a disgruntled York family. I think he is a kind man, and I think particularly Sarah Ferguson has managed to work her way back through Camilla back into the fold. I mean, there she was at Wimbledon, the Royal Box, at an Ascot. I agree. I think Charles is very foolish. I mean, Philip got the measure of them and realised that they just were, toxic and had to keep their distance. William gets the measure clearly. I know that Edward and Sophie are not great fans. So. I think it's a sign of slight weakness. He needs to I think sometimes he needs to have the iron in his soul a bit more, and just see the reputational damage, because this is now infecting the whole body politic. They need to cut off this limb. And the best thing that could happen is for Andrew to disappear into exile, like the Duke of Windsor, go off to Abu Dhabi and go and play golf and have his massages. I think the problem is Sarah Ferguson. I mean, while she remains Duchess of York, she's going to be continuing to monetize her position as a member of the royal family, and she needs to be cut fully adrift. And she can go and make a living in some other way rather than taking advantage of her royal status, which she hasn't had really for 30 years. Yeah.
And you've done some fascinating reporting about Andrew having a secret palace in Abu Dhabi, haven't you, Andrew?
Yes, well, someone has sent me a picture of it, an aerial view. I mean, it's kept, I'm told, sort of constant. It's there constantly for whenever he needs to go. And I would say this is a good time for him to go. His children can come and visit him there. He'll be treated very well. He gets on very well with all the Middle Eastern rulers. He can probably carry on doing some of his business activities under the radar. And hopefully we don't have to see him riding in Windsor Great Park. But, I think he does need to come clean, both of them, about what they've been up to. I think there are grounds for investigation into royal finances, particularly the Yorks, but maybe a parliamentary investigation into his time as special trade envoy. I'd like to get the ambassadors of Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan telling the real truth of what was going on there in the Ukraine, in Libya, in China. And I think there's a case for a royal register that, we have a much clearer sense of where their investments are. Are they in blind trusts? Are they offshore? Are they using nominee accounts? Because this
I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's long overdue. I think it's incredible that there's not a royal register. Politicians have been required to register their interests for decades. It's incredible that members of the royal family, and I often say this to people, but the royal family are a branch of the government, and if you look at their email addresses, for example, end.royal.uk. Do you know what I mean? They are a branch, and the monarchy is a branch of the government. And it's incredible that these minor characters have been able to get away with it. Now, I mean, I must say, I think Charles has, I think he's dealt with the Andrew thing incredibly badly. Actually, funny enough, someone's just mentioned in the comments about the councillors of state thing. And that felt like a missed opportunity, wasn't it? Instead of removing him and Harry as councillors of state, they just added a bunch of other people, which means that Andrew can still say, I am a councillor of state. I mean, that's a weird thing, isn't it? That this guy who's paying millions of dollars in settlements to people alleging sex abuse, who's the supreme friend of the world's most famous paedophile, is actually not just technically but officially able to stand in for the king if the king is incapacitated. And I hate to point it out, the king's very ill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, it doesn't need too many people to be ill or die in a helicopter accident, and we may end up with Andrew. He's still a Knight of the Garter. I mean, I think he's still an honorary Vice Admiral, and I think he was, as a trade envoy, a civil service employee. Those files should be in the National Archives. We should be able to see who he took on these trips. Was he taking Jeffrey Epstein, as people have said? Was he taking David and Jonathan Rowlands to do their own business activities in China and the Middle East? Was he taking his daughters, well, as we know, to basically get some useful business contacts, which they're now exploiting? So, I mean, and why are royal wills still sealed, even for the most obscure royals going back? Why are the royal, we've got the Queen's records being sorted by her valet, Paul Wybrow. We've got, Prince Philip rearranging his papers. You're absolutely right. There is an interesting division between the private and the public lives, but largely it's a public life. It's part of our history, and our history is being censored to protect these people's bad behavior. And I think people are rising. They wanted the swamp cleared in the States, and that kind of brought Trump to power. And I think there's a growing swell of opinion in this country that we need the same thing here. People have deferred for too long and been too obsequious about the royals.
And I should just say to people who don't know as much about Andrew as I do, that Andrew's a real sort of expert at the sort of archives. He knows his way around all the royal archives, the freedom of information stuff, all of that, because he had a very, very lengthy battle with the British establishment about a book that he was doing about Mountbatten. So Andrew really knows what he's talking about here when he talks about how the records are being manipulated so that historians can't really get the full truth. So that only a certain version of it is presented. And as I've said before, Andrew, I'm so happy for you that you've had this incredible success with this book, and given the establishment one in the eye after all their terrible attempts to ruin you, frankly, and they failed, which is great.
Thank you. Well, I think the interesting thing is, I think there is a shift in attitude. I think journalists, and you've been at the forefront of this, have been much more bullish about telling stories like the death of Diana and other things, relating your knowledge of Andrew in Thailand. And having had lunch with Sandra White, who was a journalist in the Mail on Sunday, she felt the same, that there is a sort of groundswell of public opinion, and indeed journalists are being slightly more sort of punchy about what they say. And I mean, clearly here we have the Mail on Sunday with some very dynamic stuff, week to week, very impressive. And maybe this will be a part of a sea change, but the royals the idea is always just to ignore things because they don't quite know what to do, and they think that's a solution rather than address it. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who could offer them reputation management advice that would perhaps help them.
And you said something really interesting earlier, where you said that there was a slight fear of a disgruntled York family taking revenge or telling all, or this kind of stuff. Then that would be, in a way, a very of all the outcomes, I suppose that would be the worst if we have spare Mark II from Andrew. But one does imagine that he'd struggle to find publishers to give him millions of pounds, to pay millions of pounds to this, because of his record with Epstein and everything. But undoubtedly, still the BBC interview, my brother was a complete XYZ, obviously could be incredibly damaging. And I suppose it is just possible that something like taking the shooting away, depriving him of his social outlets, depriving him of his status, which is something that you talk about so much, could tip him over the edge.
Well, I think we're not going to get a book by him, but what we will get is a book by some journalist who's clearly been very well briefed and has embarrassing stories. I think you're right. Andrew doesn't carry much credibility as an author or would Sarah Ferguson. I mean, we've learnt not to believe a thing they say. But I think something, cleverly disguised with a journalist writing a story, which had stories, let's say, about King Charles or Camilla, could be very damaging. The last thing they want is any of their dirty linen washed in public. I think the one pressure the royal family has is on his daughters, and that was used during the divorce settlement to kind of, with threats of custody going to Andrew to keep them in control, and clearly money with the divorce settlement. And I think we may find that there are implicit threats that we'll take care of the daughters, we won't be too harsh on them, they have a limited role to play, though they may be not working roles, but at the same time you must behave yourself, and as soon as you do anything that irritates us, we'll take it out on the kids. I think that's maybe the way. I think we've got to remember that you could watch The Crown and The Godfather side by side and you would see quite a lot of similarities.
Absolutely, and I mean, it probably is the last bit of leverage they have, isn't it? That the palace has is, how are the kids going to be treated? How are they going to be looked after or not looked after? I mean, because as I was saying earlier, you found out. I mean, the establishment, when it turns against you, it's not to be underestimated, is it?
No, it's pretty ruthless, and can be very effective. And they've seen off lots and lots of people. But I think there's a groundswell of opinion now. It's not the few isolated voices calling for accountability and transparency and decency. But I think a lot of people, you look at the comments below the articles, in podcasts and articles. I mean, people feel very strongly about this. That what's been going on is wrong, and it needs to be addressed if the monarchy is to survive. And to continue to have respect and trust.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andrew, absolutely brilliant to have you, as always. Fantastic. There's Andrew's book entitled The Most Devastating Royal Biography Ever Written. I don't think that's in any way an understatement. It's an extraordinary book, and an amazing read, and very, very entertaining read as well. I don't know what's going to happen with Andrew, but all I know is that as of right now, he still has his shooting weekends. So there's this big thing in the Telegraph, and the following up with what I was doing, saying it could be taken away from him. Well, of course, as any journalist knows, it could be taken away means he still has it. Do you know what I mean? Yes. Just the whole thing, I just find it so, it's just so gross, and it's so weird. And it's also, actually, somebody said in one of the stories that I wrote the other day, somebody said, what's so pathetic about this whole thing is that the ultimate sanction that anyone can come up with is, we're going to ground you, we're going to take your phone away, we're going to take your shooting weekends away. I mean, it's absolutely absolutely ridiculous, really. I do think Charles, but also, can I just before we go, do you not think that Charles's advisors, he's got a massive staff of people, he's got a massive office of people, should they not have dealt with this? Should they not have said to him, well, do you know what, sir, maybe not, maybe this wouldn't be a good idea, and he needs to be cut off completely, and this is the way we're going to do it?
I think the problem is that a lot of people surround the royals as sycophants and just give them what they want to hear. And if they don't tell them what they want to hear, that they get rid of them. That's a problem. I mean, there are a few people like Patrick Jeffson, who did speak truth to power and was very effective, or Christopher Gite. I think the extraordinary thing is, people don't have to go on these shooting weekends. We remember when he had a 60th birthday party and actually they had to send out a second set of invitations because the first lot, found they were washing their hair that night, and he ended up with people like the Chinese ambassador. So, why are people going these shooting weekends? I mean, is this tight coterie still so tight that they're prepared to basically go along with this and support it? Because I mean, if he had shooting weekends and no one turned up, that would kind of get the message across, and no one invited him as a result, because you're absolutely right, all the reciprocal rights that go on. But I think we've just got still a number of social climbers who can't, just love to have those invitations on the mantelpiece to show off. I would just say to them, get a life.
Yeah, Well, there we go. Perfectly. Andrew, you put it brilliantly. I'm going to end the stream now. Thanks very much, Andrew. Don't go anywhere because I want to just say thank you to you in person. But thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks for your questions. And please buy Andrew's book and follow along with the Royalist. Thanks a million. Goodbye.